Hello and welcome to Sports Talk. My name is Jamie Koepp and I'll be the host for today's show. Our special guest today is a Milwaukee legend, Harry Oden. Certainly happy to have him here, and he has a well-established career for many, many years. Dr. Oden, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Jamie.
How about a little personal background about yourself that you care to share with the viewers?
Well, I'm originally from Alabama. Matter of fact, the youngest girl and myself, my mother sent us to Milwaukee to live with her older sister and my uncle. And I think I was like about 3 and Rose was about 5 because my uncle and aunt didn't have any children. And then later on, my uncle got my father a job at a foundry, as a matter of fact, Ware Steel. And then the rest of the family moved there during the summer of 1941. And I've been there ever since. I grew up in an area called what we call Bronzeville. That's a historical area in Milwaukee. It's not as famous as Chicago Bronzeville, but it's the Bronzeville area in Milwaukee, which is just a historical place and has such a historical background behind it. And matter of fact, about 2 or 3 years ago, a gentleman come from New York wanted to do a play about Milwaukee Bronzeville. And I was one of the black center persons that he interviewed and so on for hours and so on. And later on, Sherry Purnell took over the play because he realized that it was a lot more to it than he thought. And she finished it, and 2 years ago this February, it was presented at the Performing Arts called Hello Bronzeville, and one of the youngsters was my character, played me in the play. But
oh, really?
That's the area that I grew up in. And what a lot of people don't know, they ask me now when I'm going around the country or in Milwaukee speaking about my growing up in Milwaukee and so on, where was Bronzeville? What was this and that? And I could kind of say, like, Bronzeville, I lived on the south side area of Bronzeville because it was south of Walnut Street, north of there. You kind of sit it at the north side of Bronzeville. And when you go downtown today and you look at what is MATC now, that with the main building, that was vocational tech to us. And then where you see where the Bradley Center was, where the new facility is now, that was all a part of Brownsville.
Right. And
St. Benedict was up the street. And matter of fact, that was a couple of blocks up the State Street there, or Wells Street there, a little place there we called Chinatown. A lot of people didn't know that was a Chinatown. But I grew up in this area, that area, and I would walk. And basketball wasn't in my DNA. It was baseball. That's what most of the kids played where we grew up, because there was always some baseball thing. And then close to where I lived, there was the Haymarket had kind of a baseball facility, and we used to go down and watch. At the church, we kind of grew up in church, but would go down on Sundays in the evening and watch the older guys play. And then it wouldn't be until years later that I get involved in the sport of basketball. But baseball, I love. Matter of fact, it's still my first love.
You know, baseball is such a unique thing. I always tell people, as long as I coach basketball, high school and college, I always thought one of the most fun jobs would be to be a freshman baseball coach.
Okay. Because
all you would do is teach fundamentals.
Right.
You'd never worry about the win-loss column.
Right.
You'd worry about the pivots. You'd worry about the cutoffs and everything else, and just teach the fundamentals. You'd never worry about the outcome.
But Jamie, you know, it's true now when you look at basketball. Like I see little kids playing maybe second and third grade and so forth, and I see like how parents and grown-ups get involved in. Teach the kids the game, how the teamwork of it, the fundamentals of it. Don't even keep score.
Right.
Just let kids play and learn the game. Learn to respect the game. I see a lot even older kids, they don't respect the game of basketball. And as you know, basketball is really not a hard game if you listen to it and learn the things of it and so on. But like now, what we were just speaking a little bit earlier off air, seems like it's commercialized now from every level, from the professional level to college, and seems like it's even creeping into high school. You know, with
what
the
looks
AU
sexy or something.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, you talk about baseball being the first love. It's kind of surprising. You know, people always ask, you know, what was your favorite sport or as you played? You know, and for us growing up, it was kind of whatever season it was.
Right. We did. Yeah, we changed with the season. And actually, Jamie, when I finished my basketball career at the University of Minnesota Duluth, where I went to the Twin organization. I went for the trial with them because we didn't have baseball at that campus. It's a long story what they told me about baseball there. But I played with a local team in Cloquet, which was good amateur baseball. And some of those guys, like Marty Nyquist and some of the guys, they ended up signing with Detroit and the Detroit organization, because they had what they call the Northern League. Eau Claire was in it, Duluth was in it, St. Cloud was in it, Winnipeg was in it, And so, but baseball was my first love.
That almost becomes like the baseball league, like the home talent leagues now. That sounds like from a
Right, yeah.
baseball standpoint.
Right, right.
You know, so growing up, you know, you jumped right to Minnesota Duluth. Let's talk about that. How did it end up that you went there? And then talk a little bit about the pride for, let's say, 10 or more years since you finished your playing career that you have toward Duluth. It might be 20 or 30 years for all I know.
Well, you know,
How'd you end up there?
it's very interesting because a lot of people don't know this, and I very seldom talk to people about, like when I'm around the country speaking, kids can pride of me. But I never had a basketball in my hands until I passed to 11th grade.
Okay.
Never had track and baseball was my sport, and probably if I would have really worked hard at track and high school and in college, maybe I'd have made a little bit, maybe as an alternate, because something I could do was run. But it's kind of interesting. Growing up, like I said, in Bronzeville and so on. And when we all left junior high school and went to North Division, Dr. Fuller, Howard Fuller, Jim Kilman, Marvin Fuller, and guys that we grew up with, like Al Jarreau, Al Jarreau and Marvin Fuller was probably the best all-around athletes as we was growing up. Matter of fact, Al was a tremendous athlete, all-city basketball player, matter of fact. Al probably could have played Major League Baseball. So when I was a junior in high school, actually I grew about 4 or 5 inches over the summer.
Okay.
And when I was a junior, because Marvin and Gene and Jim Kimber and Howard and them all played basketball, I asked Vic Anderson, who was also my baseball coach in high school, could I be the manager of the basketball team? And he said yes. And I would go and watch Howard and before practice, after practice. I would have Marvin and Gene, them how you dribble and so like that. And then as the season went on, they would play me one-on-one. Like the 13, they beat me 13-0.
Right.
If we played 5 games, they won 5 games. But later on in the season, I was able to beat them a game. And then I was getting better. I would ask them questions, et cetera, and so on. And then over that summer, I really worked hard trying to learn the game of basketball. And so Jim Kimball and Howard and Marvin and Gene said, "Harry, why don't you go out for the basketball team next year?" I said, "No." So they stayed on me. So I went and asked the coach, could I go out for the team? He said, "Yes, but if you don't make it, you can't be the manager." And just cutting through the chase, I ended up being a starter. There. And we had gone to the state tournament we went 3 years in a row. But Gene and Marvin played 3 years in the state tournament. And Gene was going to Kansas, University of Kansas. And it's a lot different with full rides now, as you know it.
Certainly,
You get partial scholarships then and so on. So Norm Olson, who was the coach at the University of Minnesota Duluth. Norm had taken his team to the national tournament 2 years in a row. He had a couple All-American, Bob Munson and John Sampson.
Were they Division II back then as well?
They were Division II, but all of it was a part of the NEIA and NEI, and so which was a big tournament then. And so Norm talked to Vic. He was on his way to University of Indiana, and he wanted Gene to come. And Vic said, "Well, I won't send him by himself." But also during that time, he told us that he probably would take the job at the Big Ten campus, at the Twin City campus, because of that. And so all of a sudden, he called us back and said, "Would we come to that campus up there?" We didn't know nothing about it because it was limited what black kids could go. And we knew nothing about Duluth. Jamie, the only thing I knew about Duluth, I used to see when I was in junior high school and high school, I would see this Greyhound bus.
Yep.
This Greyhound bus on Fond du Lac and 12th Street going up, said a thing said Duluth. That's all. I didn't know what Duluth was or where it was. And matter of fact, I would see it all the time. That's why I say I was probably predestined for me to go, because I was crossing the street, I almost got hit by the bus. And so cut through the chase somewhat. So Gene and I went there, and we were probably we didn't know anything about it. We were probably in Duluth 3 or 4 weeks before we saw another black face.
I believe it.
We had no idea what was going on there. And so we were there and we were freshmen. Gene played a lot as a freshman. I didn't play. I scored 22 points the whole season. And I think I scored 6 in one game. But I remember when that season, and I'm cutting through the chase with a lot of this. When that season ended, I told the coach, I said, "Mr. Olson, I'm going to be the best basketball player you ever had." And our sophomore year, we come back, and Gene come back home, and he was going to try to transfer to Kansas because they reneged on a lot of stuff they said. So I was there by myself. I was there, and there was a lot of things. Blacks and whites couldn't room together and things like that at dormitories and off-campus housing.
And that would have been a whole different world for people than what they know now.
Well, it was. It was so. And Jamie, the thing I see, Vic Anderson, he kind of prepared for us. We was in high school because the flack we would get when we played in suburban schools, like our school, when we played in O'Connor, Milwaukee, and places like when we went up the state, how we were treated. So they prepared for us a lot of it. So we pretty well trained, but not with what we saw in Duluth. So my sophomore year, Christmas time, I became a starter. And we was playing in the Red River Classic tournament. I said, Coach, I didn't start the first game, but I was in there 5 minutes after it started.
Right.
And I said, good. Then the next game I started, and I was shocked. I said, I'm going to keep this starting position until I graduate.
You know, and before you started, it wasn't about who started, it was about who finished.
That's it. So I've been started my sophomore year. My junior year, I talked Gene into coming back, and here I was all conference my junior and senior year. Gene left after my junior year, which would be his sophomore year. He left. He came back home. I made all conference. I led the conference and rebounded my junior year, and they said I made some District 13 something All-American. I don't know, but it was those 5 years I was there, in undergraduate school and graduate school, probably was the worst years of my life. I was on black on campus.
Difficult, hard, all aspects.
And the city itself was very, very racist city. It was. It was very. But now, you know, Jamie, I got to do myself proud to go over there. There wasn't a Native American there, and by the way they treated Native Americans in that area, and I'm not just talking about Duluth, I'm talking about Bemidji, because there were some reservations there. There's the Fond du Lac reservation, so where they treated them. But there was no Native American on campus, no Asian American or Hispanic. I was a black guy on this minority. And some of the stuff I went through the city, and I really just started talking about this, talking to my wife about some of this about 6, 7, 8 years ago.
You just kept it inside the whole.
Well, I kept it, but basketball was kind of an outlet for me. But what really kept me there, and I don't tell people about this too often. Some of the things I'm telling you, I just don't talk about. I'm talking about it a little more. But it was a promise that I had made my dad.
Okay.
And that promise was that in school, I used to goof off, get suspended, so in grade school. And my dad was going on a trip, Labor Day weekend. I usually want to go, and he was going to visit my uncle and so in Ohio. And I made it. He said, well, I want you to do the best job you can in school. I want your mom and dad, and we don't want to be going. I said, okay, I'm going to do the best job I possibly can, go as far as I can. That's the last conversation I had. He was killed by a drunk driver driving on the wrong side of the highway. And that was like 1953. I was about like 14. I never told anybody about that promise I made my dad until the Journal did that story about my scholarship being established at the university. That was 1995. But that was times I was going to leave the university, but I thought about that, and that was kept there. And Jamie, I played 4 years. I was on the basketball team for 4 years. I was a starter, captain, all conference and all of that. I never knew the name of a cheerleader. They never said good game, and never in 4 years. And plus, I was in classes no one ever spoke to me.
See, that's just crazy, and people now wouldn't have any semblance to have a comparison to that at all, of any experience that way. Think of how, like, the cruddy part of the 4 years, it sounds like, you know, you mentioned the hoops part was just it was the escape.
It was, you know, like after the game we would win. We didn't lose many when I was in college. We did not lose many. And after the game was a win, I would go back to the dorm, whatever. Other players would go out and so on, because it's just, you know, just the way that
times were different. Okay, so even with the junky parts of that window, the small life, think of how that's helped shape you. Well, for all the stuff you've dealt with, and how it's played a small part of you, from your upbringing to your professional career and education and everything else. You always had a burning desire inside. You never forgot.
Well, see, getting a degree was so important to me. That was so important, and I think after my our freshman year, at the athletic award banquet, I think the one that really made us say, I'm going to get a degree, although what I would go through later on, was Jesse Owens was our athletic award speaker. And just sitting there looking at Jesse Owens, and you know, like when you be someplace and somebody they looking just at you,
yep.
And he told a story about how he was used and how it was important to get a degree, how very important that was, because coaches would put you on rose-colored glasses and show you the best time. And it's kind of similar what happened to him. And that was the only black people on campus was Gene, myself, and Jess. Then he talked to us after about what he had gone through in the 36th Olympics and all what we read about did not Hitler. None of that was true. A lot of it was propaganda. He never saw Hitler. He never saw. But I think that was really what I'm going to get a degree for that. And of course I go to the other side. But that was one of the big things that made me stay in all the other crap. But I felt, from the instructor standpoint, I think they treated me fairly. There's maybe a couple of them I didn't like, but you can avoid that. I thought my teammates' base was pretty good. That was only like maybe a couple that not on my team, but that were football players, so that I didn't really care for. But the only thing that I regret to this day, and we sold out. If we played at say 7 o'clock, they was lined up at 4:30. We didn't have the competition, because women's sport hadn't come into being. They would be lined up to get tickets. But I bet you in those 4 years that we played there, the 3 that I started and the 2 I played with you, and I bet you there wasn't 10 blacks that ever come to any of those games. I mean, maybe one every now and then. And so, I was wondering why, but it's the way they were treated.
If they would have come to watch.
Yeah, but the way they was treated in the city, it was just a carryover to the university.
I can see that. Once again, our guest is Harry Oden. You can hear from the stories. He's obviously a legend in the Milwaukee area and a short time in Alabama beforehand. You know, a lot of people don't realize this, Harry. When I was in high school, you were the athletic director.
The athletic director, assistant.
You know, at that time, and you know, you look at so many things that formulate you. Think of how your adult life would have been different if you wouldn't have persevered through all that adversity at Duluth, and obviously first bachelor's degree, principal license, doctoral degree, those things. Where was your drive for the rest of that, and how do you anticipate things would have been differently if you wouldn't have stuck it out?
Well, see, one thing I said, I made a promise to myself the first year I went, and after that first year, you know, I went to the Cincinnati Royals camp and so on. Well, that's another story there. But I made a promise to myself that I would never let a kid of color go through what I went through at the university. Then I started recruiting the Milwaukee area and so on. So I spent a lot of time in the Twin Cities, and plus at that time Bobby Bell and Sandy Stevens and who was some of those? That Muncie, they was playing football and stuff down. They were playing football and so on down there. So I got to know that I would go down there, and then when they would come, and then when I would be playing in St. Thomas University, they would always come to the game and watch me play and so and so. And but it's just that promise that I made myself, and I went out and started recruiting and et cetera and so on. And the thing about it, Norm Olson, who I played for my basketball coach, I just love that man, and Jim Malosky, who was a football coach, who was my freshman basketball coach, because that time he had one coach football would help so and so, basketball would help so and so. But Norm was very honest with me. He was kind of like a Jimmy Carter, very honest man. And he told us then he couldn't have but 2 black basketball players on the court. They couldn't have but 2. And it's kind of interesting.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
But it's kind of interesting because Bill Castleman, who had gone to the Minneapolis campus on a track scholarship, but Bill was all city basketball. He wanted to play basketball. So he come up there, but Norm, because Jim Malosky, Norm said, well, I can't. So what would happen, we played, before the season started, we have a freshman varsity game. And Bill, Gene, and I, we were the 3 black kids that started and so forth. And the varsity beat us by 1 point in overtime. And we were bad. We know we're going to say they cheated us or something. Right. But it was interesting because I remember Jim Malosky and a couple other people say, you 3 would never play together again. And they did nothing to keep Bill there, and Bill left.
Wow. Boy, that's
many a time, Norm Olson said, boy, if Bill would have stayed, we felt that we'd have had a good shot, maybe not win the NAIA, but probably could have advanced because Bill was good.
Okay, so think of your maturity through the years here. You know, you leave there, you realize how tough those years were up there. So some people might just say, oh, you know what, the heck with Duluth. It's out of my mind. I'm not doing anything to support them. Now talk a little bit, as much as you care to share, about the scholarships going to Duluth. You know, because I think that'll surprise people after hearing the real deal. Talk a little bit about the scholarships you're involved with Duluth.
Well, first of all, let me share that. I think I was good for Duluth as a whole, and it made me a better person.
Right.
Some of the things and you don't realize things later on that some people want to be first at something, and some people don't know they were first at things. But a lot of things changed in the city, a lot of change on the campus. But it's kind of interesting how that scholarship was established after me, because blacks was coming to the university. They had what they call you have the different club, like you have your foreign language club. You may have your Latino club and so on. They have Afro-American club there. And Ken Foxworth, who played football at the Minneapolis campus, he and Tony Dungy was teammates, real good friends. They was real good friends. And he was hired as the minority coordinator for the Afro-American students. But he saw that it was a struggle with the money. So what he decided, so he was going to make this run. That he's going to make a run. He was going to make a run from St. Paul for the capital to the city hall in Duluth just to earn money. And it's kind of interesting. I got this call from Ken. He said, matter of fact, Ken had to lose about 60 pounds or something. He started in the fall, and it was in the spring when he made this run. And he called me because I was kind of following, because I was always visiting the campus back and forth. I was paying kids tuition out of my own pocket,
right.
Which I never told them to this day how many of them that I paid, bought books for them and things, not just at that campus, it was other.
Right.
So Ken called me and said when they were supposed to turn, it was about like 150 miles or 60 miles. And he would run like a marathon a day, but he would like split it up and do news conferences and so on. So Ken said, I want you to, and the chancellor, Dr. Ian, said they want me to be down at City Hall where he was going to terminate his run. I said, I think I can make it up there. I was assistant principal there. And so I went up there, and he made a big announcement that they had named the scholarship after me, the Harry Oden Minority and Disability Scholarship. And in the beginning, there was only like about 7. But 2 of my teammates, Dave Baker and Tom Stone, gave like about $30,000.
Okay, now share with the viewers where that is now, where that currently is. With either dollar amount or number of people that can go each year.
Well,
this is astonishing.
Matter of fact, you can get as many as 50 a year can get the scholarship. And if it's less, if it's 50, you can get $2,000. If it's less than 50, you may get more. And so it's a completely endowed scholarship. I guess it's worth about but the scholarship is off the interest and so forth.
Right.
I guess maybe it's $600,000, $700,000 now. And there was a person didn't want me to know when Marion Solon was telling me about it, that this person wanted to give so much money after they pass away to the scholarship, but they didn't want me to know who it is. So I don't. They still living, and so I don't know this. So, but it's an endowed scholarship, and like I said, a lot of those kids that go there from the Milwaukee area, they're doing extremely well.
That's incredible. That's an incredible thing. Okay, so you come back home. You come back to Milwaukee now. How did you grow such a, at this point in your career and different points through athletics and through high school as an administrator, how did you grow such a desire to help the next generation or the generation after? Is part of it because of some struggles you had?
Well, part of that, and the promise that I made to myself, and what I see what was happening in Milwaukee and other areas. And I just spent a lot of time in Chicago, Jolly. I used to travel all over and recruiting kids. So, but the one thing I love teaching. I really love teaching. And I was still playing at a high level, traveling all over the country when I was teaching, playing basketball. I was playing down in Flint, Saginaw, and Jackson. I was playing down in Decatur. I was playing off down in Gary and so on. Down in Gary, I used an assumed name playing. so down there and so on. But I was still playing at a high level. But when I was a teacher, I wanted to get involved more in the total school, not just the 5 classes I had. I wanted to know more about the school and so on. But I love teaching. I love the classroom. I really love doing that. And so they kind of taught me to go into administration. And I was still playing. And I was playing at a real high level. As a matter of fact, there was a couple of times that I almost left. There was a couple of NBA teams that was because I was playing. I had played in this league down in Flint, where Roger Brown was in there, Dayton Jones Mortician was in there, Flynn Robinson was in there, and Flynn and I was together. We were roommates, and Bobby Love, we was roommates when I was out in Cincinnati. And I almost left. But I said, no, I just love teaching too. But I was still playing at a high level, and I was traveling and so on. So they was a little
right.
bit. And so
making it worthwhile.
Yeah, and I really, but I really love teaching, and I saw what was happening to a lot of kids, and I said, I want to do something about this. And I would send kids to UMD, and it wasn't just there. I've sent kids down to HBCU, Jackson State. I did a lot with Al McGuire. I was one of the few people that he let me talk with his kids. Meminger was one of mine, and Jimmy Jones, and so on. A lot of people don't know about it. I just loved Hank. Hank Raymond. I've done a lot for Kevin Sampson, Ray McCallum, Tubby Smith, and I've done stuff for Tubby, a lot George Raveling, and so on. So a lot of them, and so on. And a lot of the kids that I have recruited, I never met their parents. And a lot of the coaches, I never met the coaches, but they would call me, because they heard that I was fair and so on. And I would recommend the kid to them. And it was just when I would go see a kid, I wouldn't just, on my judgment, like Howard would watch the kid. And matter of fact, if I had to go see two kids and they was playing a different place, my wife would go to one game and I would go to another. Because she knows best. She went to Christmas. She was one of our classmates and so on. So she knows best. As a matter of fact, one of the kids that she was responsible for recruiting was Jay Gettinger from Dominican, who ended up being a three-time All-American there and playing the NBA a couple of years because of her. But it was my focus was mostly on black kid, Afro-American kids. There was a lot of white kids that I said, not just athletes who kids want to go to school, and I've sent them all over, not just to UMD. And it take a special person even today to go up to Duluth, UMD, believe me.
It sure does.
It take a special person. Like, I won't send a kid from Chicago there unless I really look at it. Can this kid survive up there? I won't send a kid from Detroit there, which I should recruit that area to Jackson, unless they really can survive there, because they still have some issues. There's still some tough situations up there. Because when you get north of the Twin Cities, boy, you're catching it.
You know, it's funny when you say that, because you think about certain kids. And when I started teaching in Milwaukee, one of the things, I was a correctional officer at the detention center simultaneously, and so I was teaching at Steuben at the time. And so I would work third shift as a correctional officer, and then I would teach first shift. I'd leave with my briefcase every day, and then I was coaching at Cardinals Church, and after that I was coaching at Juneau, obviously. So that's, you go about 3 or 4 years without sleep. But you also see a kid in a different element. You see him in a controlled environment, and then you also see it when they have the temptations of the street, which is two totally different polar opposite things.
But too, Jamie, a lot of kids couldn't afford to go to basketball camps and so on and so. And I would still work out doing it when I was playing at a high level. They would come and I would work out with them. It was free. I didn't charge them, and we work out, and I worked on basically the fundamental thing. But the first thing that I would sit down and talk with them and tell their parents, it's not about basketball. It's about getting an education and how you use an athletic skill, basketball, football, track, baseball, whatever, to get you where you want to go and what you want to do later in life, because you can't play this sport all your life. Because I had some people that was guiding me when I was coming. I'd go look at the Johnny Watts. I look at Seal Polk, Chuck Hilt, even Jim Smallings when he come. I look at those people who helped me along the way, and so that encouraged me. And one of the biggest encouragement that I had when I was up at UMD was the letter carrier that we had, which was probably one of the earliest first black letter carriers in the city of Milwaukee. Where he took all of us under his wing when we was at North. And he would come to the games, support us, go down to the locker room. He's one of the few, and so and so. And when I went off to university, he would start spending time with my mom. How is Harry doing? He would send me little notes and things like that. And I didn't realize that one of the ministers in our church, Reverend Brown, Howard Brown, was his son.
Oh, no kidding. That's crazy.
I did not know that a few years ago. Then I stopped and he looked just like him, but see, Reverend Brown, short, and his dad about 6'2" or 6'3". But that was one of the encouraging things. But that was a lot of people that encouraged us to do well, to do well, not just from the athletic standpoint. Education was so important, especially in black families during the time we was coming.
Oh, heck yeah. Once again, Harry Oden's our guest, and you certainly heard from Duluth to Milwaukee and everything else. This show could be about 4 hours as we talk about different things and all the various accomplishments and accolades and Hall of Fames and everything else. But you can certainly hear the passion that he has for kids and different generations all the way through, and it doesn't matter of race or ethnicity, just kids in general, and he wants to help. This concludes another edition of Sports Talk. Keep talking sports. Harry, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.